Hi guys, a war between Armenia and Azerbaijan backed by Turkey started just a week ago. Since Turkey is a NATO member and it was involved in Armenian genocide, that's a pretty big deal. You might be confused what's going on and what they are fighting over, and media will never tell you the truth, but luckily you have me. I've been to Armenia and Azerbaijan and I like both countries, so today I'll try to be neutral. Let's start from the official story. Here is Armenia, and here is Azerbaijan, which consists of two parts. The main one and the small exclave called Nakhichcan. During Soviet times, there was a Nagorno-Karabakh autonomous Oblast inside Azerbaijan, which had like 80 to 90% of Armenian population and the rest was Azerbaijani. In 1989, that Armenian part decided to break out from Azerbaijan and join Armenia. And after the bloody war, they managed to control almost all territory of Nagorno-Karabakh, plus some of the areas to be able to connect Nagorno-Karabakh with Armenia. As the result, all the Azerbaijani population was displaced or killed. For the last 30 years, Nagorno-Karabakh, or Artsakh, the Armenian name, became de facto an independent satellite republic of Armenia. If you go on Google Maps, the only indication that there is something wrong going on there is these Armenian names inside Azerbaijani territory. The official explanation of the current military campaign is that Azerbaijan trying to regain control over the rebellious region. At that point you might say Azerbaijani do it right and we should all support them. Unfortunately, the story is way more complicated. First, why Turkey is involved? The thing is that Turkish and Azerbaijani is basically one nation broken apart, at least according to the point of view of Turkey. Language-wise, Turkish and Azerbaijani are mutually intelligible. From what I know, if you're a Turkish speaker, you basically need like half a day in Azerbaijan to be able to understand 90% of the conversation. Second, what about historical Armenian territories? Armenia was independent back in antiquity from 331 BC to 428 AD, and then again in medieval times from 880 AD to 1045 AD. If you look at both of these maps, it covers a giant part of Turkey and giant part of Azerbaijan. You might question yourself, what happened to all these lands? Why Armenia is so small? The simple answer here is Turkish invasion. Turkish started to arrive gradually from 1030 AD. Around year 1500 AD, Armenia was divided by two big powers. One is Ottoman Empire and another one is Persian Empire. Both of them were Muslim, and Armenia was a Christian state. Actually, Armenia was the first nation in the world to adopt Christianity as a state religion back in 301. In Ottoman Empire, the attitude towards non-Muslim population was relatively good. They were allowed to keep their religion, language and culture, and in exchange they have to pay slightly more of taxes than Muslim people. Armenians were thriving under Ottomans, and some of them even managed to build a successful career and became part of the government. In Persian part of Armenia, the behavior towards Christians were less tolerable. As a result, Armenian population there was in decline and it was replaced by Turkish and other Muslim people. However, there was one exception, Karabakh. It was called a Principality of Khachen back then, and it was the last outpost of Armenian state. They managed to maintain independence or semi-independence within Persian Empire. They kept their language and culture, and virtually 100% of population there was Armenian. Things started to change after the year 1603 AD, when principalities split into 5 different feudal units called Melikdoms. The relationship between them got worsened, and around the year 1750, Persian created a Khanate ruled by Turkish Panah Ali Khan. This guy started to expel Armenian and invited Turkish and Kurd settlers. Now it looks like the fate of Persian Armenian was predetermined back then, and complete decline and assimilation was just a question of time. But suddenly Russia came into the game. After a series of successful Russo-Persian wars, in 1928 Russia annexed Yerevan, Nakhichcan and Karabakh Khanate. Yerevan Khanate, which is basically a contemporary territory of Armenia, had only 20% of Armenian population back then. But Russian government decided to create an Armenian Oblast out of Yerevan and Nakhichcan Khanate and invited Armenians from the rest of Persian Empire to come and settle down in their historical land, which many of them did, and soon Armenians formed the majority of population over there. Basically, if not Russia, there were no Armenia today. Later, Russia decided to fight against Ottoman Empire. In 1778, it won Russo-Turkish War, freeing a bunch of European nations from Ottoman Empire. As a result, Romania, Serbia, Montenegro and de facto Bulgaria became an independent states and were no longer subject of Ottoman Empire. The main reason of their independence is that majority of population within the respected countries were non-Turkish. There were also talks about creating an independent Armenia on the 6 eastern regions of Turkey, where Armenian formed close to the majority of population. But this was not included in the treaty. Instead, Turkey guaranteed protections to Armenian population against Kurds and Circassians. Ottomans didn't follow the agreement, and instead Sultan Abdulhamid decided to reduce Armenian population in respected regions, so that they will never form a majority there. He armed Kurdish paramilitary and allowed mass murder. The estimation of Hamidian massacres from 1894 to 1896 are from 80,000 to 300,000 native Armenians. Which sounds crazy, but this is not the end of the story. Kurds gone a little bit wild and decided to reduce another Christian population called Assyrians. These are actually people who speak the language from times of Jesus Christ. In massacres of Diyarbakir in 1895, they killed 25,000 of Assyrians. To counteract, Ottoman Armenians decided to revive their national identity and started a movement towards independence. In the beginning of the 20th century, the nationalism in Turkey was on the rise. The new movement, Young Turks, was created. They were promising Turkey for Turks. In 1908, they overthrown Sultan Abdulhamid and started to build a new Turkish nation-state. All other nations, especially non-Muslims, were considered as traitors to that great idea. Ottoman Empire continued to dissolve as a result of First Balkan War in 1913 they lost almost all their European possessions. Despite being quite weak after that war, they decided to join First World War just within a year, in 1914, with a sudden attack on Russia led by local Hitler, the Minister of War, Enver Pasha. He was badly defeated by Russians and lost the Battle of Sarikamish. Upon his return to Istanbul, the loser claimed that Armenian soldiers betrayed him and that's why they lost. In the same year, Enver Pasha started the Armenian genocide, which was officially called Armenian deportation. Basically, all the Armenian possessions were taken and Armenians were marching out of the cities and then they were killed or starved by death. Genocide estimates varies, but from 700,000 to 1.5 million of Armenians were killed. You might say maybe Armenians were evil and actually betrayed our Minister of War. Well, it's quite unlikely because the same paramilitary group did another 2 genocides against different Christian population within the same time frame. These are less known: Assyrian genocide, which estimates 150 to 300,000 people died, and Greek genocide, which is 450 to 750,000 people died. As the result, 3 different Christian populations were completely wiped out from Turkey over a period of just 30 years. Hitler would have been probably proud of that behavior. Let's return to Russia. In 1917, as a part of World War I, it managed to capture some of the Turkish Armenian provinces. But in the same year, Russia experienced the revolution and communist Bolshevik came into power. In 1918, Bolsheviks signed a peace deal with Ottoman Empire and returned back all the newly acquired possessions in Caucasus. In the same time, Russian Caucasian republics Armenia, Azerbaijan and Georgia declared independence. But without Russian control, ethnic tensions emerged very quickly. An Armenian-Azerbaijani war started in 1918. Massive ethnic cleansing were happening on both sides, and this reshaped the whole ethnic map of the region. Some historians estimated around 180,000 of civilians were killed in total. In the same time, in 1918, Ottomans and Germans lost First World War. In 1920, a Treaty of Service was signed, and Turkey was partitioned by winners. This time, Armenia got a large chunk of territory. But the treaty was never implemented, and Armenia never controlled that land. In the same time, newly independent Armenia actually controlled Nakhichcan and Karabakh, and still quite a big chunk of Turkey, notably Kars area, which was captured by Russian Empire back in 1878. Clearly, Caucasian republics were not able to stay independent for a long time. Both Turkey and Bolshevik Russia wanted to invade them. Armenians preferred Russians and quickly joined approaching Russian forces. At the end, Bolshevik Russia and Turkey made another treaty in 1921 called Treaty of Kars. Soviet Union regained most of the Caucasian region back. However, a huge part, which was controlled by Armenia and Georgia and historically was controlled by Russian Empire, was transferred back to Turkey. Another thing is that Turkey demanded on preferential treatment of Azerbaijani people. In the treaty, they demanded that Karabakh and Nakhichcan would be part of newly established Azerbaijan Republic. We don't really know why Soviet leader Stalin agreed on that. The speculation here is that they wanted Turkey to be a potential ally and maybe bring some communism over there. Soviet Union was good to keep peace between nations. Nonetheless, in 1923, Stalin decided to create a Nagorno-Karabakh autonomous Oblast within Azerbaijan Republic. Basically, he tried to include all the Armenian villages into that newly created region. Back then, 90% of population there was Armenian, and in 1989, Armenian population was reduced to 80%. The newly created Azerbaijan part of Nakhichcan had 60% of Muslim population and 40% of Armenian. In 1980, the number of Armenian dropped to around 1%. And now, as you might guess, it's zero. During the Soviet times, the tensions between Armenians and Azerbaijani were minimal. Most of the cities had both the populations living next door to each other. But when Soviet Union was about to collapse and government became weaker, ethnic tensions rose again. In 1988, Nagorno-Karabakh decided to join Armenia, and Azerbaijan disagreed. This led to Nagorno-Karabakh War, which Azerbaijan lost back then. Military losses on both sides were significant, 6,000 Armenian and 25,000 Azerbaijani. Civilians were affected less this time, probably around 3,000 people died on both sides. However, displacements were outrageous: 724,000 Azerbaijanis, from 300 to 500,000 Armenians. I think these numbers are slightly overestimated, but nonetheless it's huge. So, who's right and who's wrong? Clearly, Turkish killed 1.5 million of Armenians and wiped out them from their land and never been held accountable. Soviet Union back in 1920s had a strong preference toward Azerbaijan, giving Karabakh and Nakhichcan to them. Despite all of the atrocities, Nagorno-Karabakh managed to keep Armenian population there through the whole history of that place. I don't really get why should we respect borders which were incorrectly drawn over 100 years ago by Stalin. And to be fair, Azerbaijan got Nakhichcan, which back then had 40% of Armenian population, which maybe wasn't that fair. But no one asks Azerbaijan to give it back. Finally, Russia was always an ally of Armenia, and that was the only way to prevent Armenia from being conquered by Azerbaijan and Turkey. As the result, Armenian government was controlled by Russians most of the times. Recently, an opposition politician, Nikol Pashinyan, became a prime minister of Armenia, which made Russia unhappy. And that's why this time Russia decided not to take any active part in the conflict, at least for now. International community is always very concerned and think hard how to solve Armenian question. As Victor Hugo said over 100 years ago, if a man is killed in Paris, it's a murder. If throats of 50,000 people are cut in the East, it's a question. The upcoming weeks will be decisive in the conflict, and sadly we might see another Armenian genocide. And nobody cares. Thanks for watching, don't forget to like and subscribe, and hopefully see you next time. Bye.